I'm Les, the Adult Programming Librarian at Jessamine County Public Library. And today I'm going to let you watch as I transplant this little maple tree from under the canopy of this big fir tree out into my lawn. Oftentimes you'll find in wooded areas of your property, you've got little saplings coming up. Some really nice ones, maybe oaks or maples or elms, that would look lovely in your front lawn and probably won't survive where they are. So transplanting them is a great idea. Remember, you don't want to transplant things from other people's property, and certainly not from parks. But if they're growing around your house, they're fair game. Now, I measured the trunk of my tiny little sapling, and it was about 1.25 inches around. But even a tiny sapling can have an expansive root system. The general rule of thumb for trees whose trunks are under 1.5 inches in diameter is to multiply that measurement by 18 to 20, and then that will be the diameter of the root system that you want to dig out from the tree. So we're going to measure about 22 to 25 inches out from my tree, and we're going to dig a line around it and see if we can get all the roots up. I don't recommend attempting to transplant trees much over 1.5 inches. The root system gets very big and complicated, difficult to dig up, especially if you're in a woods with a lot of other trees around it. And it also limits the survival rate of your tree. You've got a big root system and chances are you're going to miss a lot of it. So stick with the little ones. It's also a good idea to plant in spring or late fall when the ground is workable, but you're still a long way off from those hot summer months. And if you can, get your tree before the leaves start to come out. Now, we've got leaves on this tree, but they're still just uncurling. They're not quite fully developed yet, and I think we're safe from the summer heat. Depending on where your tree is growing, you might want to have a pair of branch nippers or a branch saw handy, because you may have to cut roots and vines from around the base to get your tree out of here. In my case, I'm going to be cutting some of this English ivy out of here. Now, one thing you'll notice about our dig site is the soil is nice and loose. When the soil is loose, the tree will tend to not spread out as wide, but go a little bit deeper into the ground. If this were hard compacted clay, the root systems might lay further out in search of water, and they might lay a little bit closer to the surface, and they might be thicker. So we're probably in luck in that our tree root system is going to be more down than out. So this is a bit of English ivy, but here we can see the little roots of our tree, and as we guessed, they are not so much spread a full 24 inches from the tree as they are going down deep into this nice loose soil. So we're going to try to uncover them so we see where the root ball might be. This looks like it might be the end of some of our top roots right here. Here's one. Looks like it might go a little bit further. All right, we're going to try to go ahead and get our shovel and get in underneath that. So lifting it out there pretty good. Now at some point you might be tempted to pull your tree by the trunk to try to lift that central taproot out, but don't do that. The goal is to lift out the root ball with the soil intact and cause the least trauma to the tree as possible. Now, as you see, we're starting to lift the main top of the root system up with our shovel. You might want to feel down with your hand and see if you can feel the taproot and get an idea of how deep it goes. Once you think you've lifted the entire root ball of the tree, you want to get some burlap or some other tarp to lift the root ball onto and wrap it up. Now, this is just to transport it to the new location. We're going to plant ours right away. If you did not want to plant your tree right away, and I really recommend that you do plant it right away, you may want to wrap it in burlap and wet it down really good and tie it up just like they would do in a nursery. But in our case, we're going to go ahead and plant this little guy, so we're just going to get him up with as much of this root ball intact as we can onto a tarp. You can ignore these roots. Those are my English ivy there again, these fat ones. Those are not part of our tree. This is our tree. We've got them lifted on there. Now we've got a really loose root ball. We're going to want to wet that down really good. It's actually great if you transplant a tree right after it rains. It helps keep the root ball a little bit more intact, but ours isn't too bad, and we should be able to transport it easily over to its new home. You want to have your site all prepped before you dig up your tree. You can guesstimate the size of the hole that you'll need to dig. It should be 2 to 3 times as wide as the diameter of your root ball. So I measured our little root ball. It was only about 15 inches as it turns out. And I've dug my hole to about 40 inches, so that's good. It's going to be a shallow hole that's kind of like a bowl. We want those feeder roots that lay on top to continue to lay on top so that they can get oxygen, and we're just going to lightly cover them. If you have a deep taproot, you'll want to make a hole in the center of your hole with a long, skinny shovel to make sure that when you insert that taproot, it doesn't curve on the end, but sits straight down in. If it curves, that's called J-root. And that can be bad for the tree. It can prevent it from taking up nutrients and water properly. Now, our tree did not have much of a taproot at all. So I think that this hole can be pretty shallow. They actually make a tool to do this if you've got a deep taproot. This long skinny shovel will work okay. You also will want to kind of break up the soil in your taproot hole to ensure that it can get down in there well. All right, we're going to set our tree in gently and see how it fits. Now, we've got this black plastic to slip out from under here, and our ball is not at all well contained. It's pretty loose. So we're going to want to be really gentle about pulling this out and seeing how well everything fits. All right. Not too bad. You can see we've got our feeder roots laying on top pretty well. We're going to need to add some soil in under here to keep our tree straight. And under here, you keep those lying on top there, those little roots. If you've got any tucked under, you may want to reach in and pull them out gently. Just let those lay right on top. And we're going to cover this very gently with soil, but we're also not going to want to leave a lot of air pockets. So when you're transplanting, you want to make sure you have a hose that can reach your tree, because we're going to need to water it well and get those air pockets out of our hole. Now you see that the tree sits up out of the ground. It's not buried deeply down in the ground. And you can see that we've got these roots up here and this bottom part of the tree still bared. That part of the tree needs oxygen, so that's a-okay. All right, we're going to give it a little water before we go ahead and mulch it in. Now, for the first week or so, you'll want to make sure that your tree stays nice and wet. And if you go through any long, hot, dry spells over the summer, you may want to go ahead and water your tree then. But you don't want to give it any kind of artificial conditions. Don't put any fertilizer or any special tree treatments in it. And you don't need to water it too often. You can drown it. Last but not least, you'll want to mulch around your tree. You do not need to mulch all the way up to the trunk. Just leave a little ring around there so the tree's getting plenty of air and oxygen. The mulch will help hold moisture in, so we've watered it nicely, and this will keep it from drying out. Deer love to browse on small young saplings, and we've had many trees that we've transplanted just kind of get eaten away by the deer as they roamed through our yard. So this year we're protecting these trees really well. We've got some 4-foot steel posts, some 36-inch tall galvanized steel garden fence, and we're going to put a perimeter about 3 foot out from the tree. This fence should be tough enough that the deer can't knock it over, and further enough out from the tree and tall enough that they can't reach in with their necks and eat it through the fence. You'll need a good sledgehammer to get the stakes into the ground, and you probably want to do this on a day when it's been raining or a day after it's been raining so that they're easy to drive in. And if you're short like me, you might need some taller help. The stakes are designed with these little hooks to hold your wire, so that's really handy. So you can press those metal clips in over your wire to hold it. Alternatively, if you do not get stakes with these little metal clips, or you can't get your wire in there quite right, you can also zip tie your wire to the stakes. When you get all the way around, you want to take a good pair of wire nippers and cut your fence. So now our little tree has some deer-proof fencing and should survive the spring. Thanks for watching. For more great videos and resources on gardening, tree planting, and other outdoor activities, go to www.jesspublib.org.